Everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee with Legal Issues of Today. Today we have our superstar panel with the Grimes and Primes and also crack research analyst, attorney Vanita Banks. But we have so many legal issues that are facing us. Uh, it's sort of like, I got to be quite frank with you, it's like I'm getting legal whiplash from all these crazy things that happens every day. There's so many legal issues that emanate from the White House by itself until it'll take me the rest of the year just to talk about the things that happened the last week. And so they're all fascinating things, but it tells us right away the importance of election. Now we see what happens when you don't vote. You get these crazy rules and regulations, and there's so many to start with. And Marlon, we were talking before the show started about these crazy attacks on Smithsonian Institute and things like that. And but maybe we should start there. And Marlon, what's the issue with the institutes and the museums and the attack on these crazy attacks? What's going on?
Hey, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Nathaniel. I'm glad to be here with this esteemed panel. Yes, the president has come forth with another executive order, and that order was issued on the 27th, which is of March, which is Thursday. And basically, it is directed at a national treasure, which is our Smithsonian Institutes, which are one of the largest history complex, not only in the country, well, not in the country, but also in the world. And so he's basically saying that, he's going to direct Vice President Vance to make sure there's no divisive topics that are at the Smithsonian. He specifically pointed out the African American Museum. He pointed out the fact that uh, they should investigate whether or not in the past 5 years statues have been removed that should not have been. So we could see, statues resurrected, and many of those statues were of Confederate leaders that fought to destroy what is known as the United States of America. They're indicating that anything, in the materials that are distributed, that are displayed, can be subject to removal and, be sanitized. So it's really, really scary in terms of, where things are going.
So they're trying to quote whitewash history, uh, so maybe minimize the effect of slavery, uh, lynching, and Jim Crow, and the ultimate outcome of this is what? What they're trying to
Well,
reinstitute these draconian rules and regulations?
well, I mean, we only can look at, George Orwell and his famous book 1984, and, famous quote that many of your audience knows: who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. So, this is straight from the authoritarian's handbook that we saw in Germany, that we saw in Italy, that we saw in the Soviet Union, where they seek to just rewrite history. And so, we have to be very, very careful. This is a attack to our democracy. And as many commentators have indicated, democracies, we can't take that for granted. We've seen democracies around the world crumble in our lifetime. And that's why it's important that we have lawyers. That's why it's important to have an educated community so that we can ring the alarm bell when these sorts of threats to democracy take place.
And this order with respect to the Smithsonian Museums directs Vice President Vance to, quote, eliminate improper, divisive, or anti-American ideology from the museums and to work with Congress to keep from funding exhibits or programs that, quote, divide Americans based on race. And so the question becomes, who makes the determination of what is, quote, improper, divisive, or anti American ideology? And as you stated, Attorney Lee, every day we're faced with yet another outrageous executive order. And let's just start with the basic proposition that many of these executive orders are just outright illegal.
Well, it's obviously the administration does not care about the present day law. They violated it in every way you can think. And even Vance mentioned, I understand that he doesn't necessarily agree with some of the actions of the president, but he's going to go along with it. So like we discussed last week, I don't know what this man have on Lindsey Graham and the other leaders of this country, even though they were Southern ideologies, they still had some appearance of supporting due process in making decisions that involve the people. But now that's been ignored. So, folks, we fought slavery, had a civil war because of slavery. We fought Jim Crow. We had an internal war fighting Jim Crow. We lost many lives. It seemed as though this administration and Elon Musk laughing with he might as well have had a machine gun in his hand, laughing with a chainsaw in his hand, illustrating we'll cut it down, all of these statutes and laws that have been up here in America. So I don't know what to say other than they're pushing people to rise up against the government.
Right, and it reminds us of the commission that the President Trump commissioned in his first term, the 1776 commission, where it was just a sanitizing of our history and a sanitizing of slavery. And, as many commentators indicated at that time, hey, slavery was awful, full stop. It was a crime against humanity, full stop. So a lot of these efforts are designed to, desensitize us to, what our ancestors had to go through. But go ahead. You go ahead.
No, Marla, please go ahead. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I've done recent reading about slavery and how those who control the narrative makes the Civil War look like the South won it, like the Confederacy won the Civil War. They have a lot of people in America believing that. Robert E. Lee is above a hero. He's damn near a saint in some of the people's eyes. So they're resurrecting him from being a traitor to a hero again, which means that's approval of slavery, the institution of slavery. So I just don't know what the answer is, Vanita. Your answer, what are we going to do about this? I remember Huey Newton and the Panthers getting on the steps of the California Capitol when it was questioned as to whether or not Black folks could have guns, and they all had guns. I've never seen more of an inspirational, beautiful picture of a people than that picture. It's always been one of my favorite pictures, with those brothers standing on the Capitol steps defending themselves. I'm not trying to instigate or advocate armed violence, but I just read this morning that this month's Social Security check will be coming, but next month Social Security check will be affected.
Well, it's an outright assault against the United States government and our way of democratic life in this nation. What we're witnessing every day, to your point, Attorney Grimes, is the dismantling of federal agencies. In fact, um, the destroying of federal agencies and their ability to let me just back up and say the destruction of the infrastructure of the United States of America.
Yep.
And so you hear people saying, oh, this is going to be a hard 4 years. Well, my response to that is that the slashing that is happening on a day-to-day basis to agencies such as the Department of Education, the Social Security, administration, FEMA, and others, we're not going to survive for 4 years.
Right.
It's just not possible. And so it is the intentional rendering of of the inability of the United States government to function to serve the needs of the people that's being dismantled right now. And so it's like the United States of America is being bankrupted, by a few wealthy billionaires and being sold off for parts. So I'm just not sure. Well, I am sure how we address it. We all have to step up and advocate against what's happening. And we've seen the attacks against lawyers and judges, and we've seen how some law firms are capitulating that have been the target of some of these attacks. However, I'm encouraged that the courts, with respect to the attack on certain law firms, so far they're 3 for 3. So all of those law firms that have filed suit against these illegal executive orders, judges have granted their request for temporary restraining orders.
Well,
Yeah,
I got a question about that. This is very important. These big law firms, this week, President Trump announced that the major law firm of Skadden, Arps, Slate, Mager, and Flom had agreed to provide $100 million in pro bono work on issues that he supported in an effort to avoid punishing a proposed executive order targeting the law firm. Now, he's done this multiple times, and it goes back to Shakespeare, where they say the first thing you do is kill all the lawyers. How in the hell can these lawyers who are folding could represent clients in good faith if they themselves can't simply defeat something that's clearly illegal that will give them millions, if not billions of dollars in damages? Why would anybody hire any of these law firms that fold that easy? I mean, if I'm going to court, I want a warrior on my side. I don't want a wimp. It just strikes me, regardless of what these law firms are saying, that they're a bunch of, well, I don't respect what they're doing. And I think that they should have been a better model in terms of fighting this. If all these law firms would have fought these executive orders properly, what would have occurred is that they would have bankrupted the federal government because they're going to win every freaking lawsuit. You can't simply, the legal system is still stable. That's the only thing that protects us. Judges will not allow this type of clear misconduct. I just don't believe that they would. Juries would reward millions, if not billions of dollars in damages if you get jury trials on these things.
Yeah, and I think that's what President Trump is counting on. He's counting on, one or two law firms breaking ranks. And I agree with you. Had the entire legal community stood in unison and said, hey, this is unprecedented, to single out a law firm and say they're going to be excluded without doing any analysis and not having any legitimate basis for doing so is a threat to democracy. So I agree with you, Nathaniel. It is very discouraging. The other thing that we have to talk about that's related to that is that, these judges, they have stood strong and basically indicated that the administration is wrong. And in response to that, we've seen, members of Congress, particularly the Speaker of the House, indicate that they're going to hold hearings. They're going to try to impeach some of these judges or potentially withhold funding, which is also unprecedented. So, I think we should be proud of the fact that, this is a level of restraint on this administration, that we do have a functioning judiciary. It will be interesting to see, how these cases turn out once they flow through the federal system and onto the Supreme Court.
Well, this week, Jenner and Block stated that that they are going to fight this executive order To your point, Attorney Lee, regarding the firm that, quote, took a deal with the administration and agreed to contribute $100 million to support initiatives supported by the administration. Again, unprecedented that you would take such a, quote, deal before the executive order was even issued. And the one law firm that agreed to pay $40 million, they stated a number of reasons for their capitulation. The one was it didn't appear that any other law firms were stepping up to support their efforts. And they said that the executive order was an existential threat against their existence, their outright existence. But guess what? If they feared, and of course they feared because I believe some clients were leaving because these executive orders had been entered. But guess what? The action that they took will result in a even bigger threat to their existence, because how can clients in the future actually trust the members of this firm that we're talking about right now? And I read that each of these partners, that their yearly salary, or and I want to confirm this, it's like $6.5 million dollars. And so they certainly could have afforded, right, to step up to fight this, but chose to capitulate. My view is that when we look back in 5 years, or even sooner than that the firms that capitulated to the will of the administration, they will not be in existence.
I think they're going to take a financial hit. And I think you're absolutely right, Attorney Banks. I think you're going to look at young people that are making decisions whether or not to work for these particular firms. And granted, there are a number of, conservative clients, but there are a number of progressive ones as well, or middle of the road that just want things done correctly. And so I think Attorney Lee is absolutely correct. I mean, you want someone that has your interest at heart, the client's interest at heart, not, just this self-interest, so to speak. The other example, to go to your point that it's going to be a temporary gain, is look at the stand that Georgetown University Law Center took. This past week, statistics showed that they had a record number of applications. So I think there are benefits in Georgetown standing up and then, having, more applications. I think the same would have been true for these law firms had they stood up as well.
What we see, in my opinion, is like, I was trying to think of an analogy. I can't think of one, but it's just we're out of control. It's like we got a kid behind the wheel of a car who can't look over, can't see. They're just driving down the street, hitting everything in its way and having fun. And that's what this administration appears like to me. And I would think that our checks and balance system in this democracy, even though it allowed for slavery, people voted on it, and they went to war against, even though it allowed for Jim Crow laws, segregation. We had a system that was set up that was used to get justice for people who were discriminated against, who weren't getting equal education, who were denied access to housing and different things. Our politicians, the people we elect to be the check and balance, are not doing their job now. They're not stepping in, correcting this stuff and going having congressional hearings and meetings to stop it. Musk and Trump are just going, about what they want. And it just, we talk about Trump, but I think our Congress has a job to do that they're not doing.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the response that I hear is that, oh, well, they fear for their jobs. They fear that they will be targeted. We see all this money is going
That's bad.
into the Wisconsin Supreme Court race and the illegal action of Musk in um, contributing $2 million to those individuals that are registered, to vote. And the Attorney General in Wisconsin declared that action to be illegal. So he had to come up with another plan. But the auspices is that they're in fear of their elections being targeted and that they will lose their election. To me, that's not an excuse
Right,
for their actions. And what it says to me is that they agree with what's going on,
right.
because what they should be doing is standing up and saying, this is wrong. And we've seen many of those Republican lawmakers be deluged by citizens in the town hall meetings. And how have they responded? Instead of listening to their constituency, they are actually shutting down those meetings and threatening not to continue with the local town hall meetings because they're declaring that the citizens are out of order. But what we're seeing is across this nation, we're seeing citizens, rise up and uh, uh, crowd their field offices, speaking against these things that are happening. We're seeing veterans, we're seeing teachers, we're seeing citizens across the country voice their displeasure regarding many of these actions, which, are illegal. We've never seen executive orders in the history of this nation being used in such a flagrant, unconstitutional, illegal manner. And as lawyers, we have to step up to this, um, united, um, and protect our democracy. I mean, these are
Here,
flagrant attacks on the rule of law. And go ahead, Attorney Grimes.
yeah, I'm sorry, Dave. Here in LA, the new district attorney, Hotch,
Okay.
has implemented the death penalty trials. Young men are going to be tried for killing a police officer or there's a couple other offenses that I forgot what they are right now, but he has said his deputies are going to meet and decide whether or not they're going to pursue the death penalty in case. Thankfully, our governor still has a moratorium on the death penalty. So he can put as many people on death row as he wants here in this county, but the governor said there's a moratorium, there's an order, there's a system in place before the death penalty is implemented. His implementing it locally is just one step. We seem to have lost that approach to the governing of our society on a whole.
I think those are great points. And, not only on the local level in Los Angeles, but also nationally, we're just forgetting a fundamental tenet. There's three branches of government. And the problem with, and Attorney Banks is absolutely correct. A lot of these executive orders are, clearly problematic because if Congress passes an act and they, implement and pass money, a president in the executive branch through an executive order can't say, hey, that legislation is no longer going to be enforced.
Right.
Or, money that's been appropriated is no longer going to be used. And I agree with you that it is disappointing that we do not have more people on both sides of the aisle just state that fundamental point. Irrespective of your political views, we all should adhere to the constitutional structure of three branches of government. Now, the problem is that, we're kind of distorted because there are a lot of politicians that are fearful. take, for example, a number of courageous Republicans, particularly in my home state of Ohio, basically called it as it was in terms of what happened on January 6th, that the president should be held accountable. All of those, most of those individuals who cast those courageous votes that indicated that there was, warrant and voted for impeachment, a lot of them were primaried and run out of the party. And in fact, there were, statements and condemnations by the Republican Party for those people that stood up. So I'm not saying that they should not stand up. That's not my point. My point is that there is a fear of standing up and doing the right thing because of this past history. And I think what we can do is not only educate people, and it's important that you flood these town hall meetings, but the concern I have is that we have to sustain this until the midterm in 2026. We have to sustain this and actually vote in 2028. So those are the things I think we have to educate people on.
Okay, let's take a caller real quickly. Hey, caller, you have a comment or question for us today? Go ahead.
This is Pierre.
Hey, Pierre, thanks for the comment. By the way, I like that firms that capitulate ad slogan. We didn't. I mean, I think that's a great idea, guy. Great idea.
Yeah, they're these firms, those mega $1 million firms are going to lose a whole lot of business, because if you're selling your law firm, you're going to say, hey, remember, they're the ones that capitulated against Trump. We didn't, so we're not going to cut and run on you. They're going to lose a lot of business going forward. But quick points to Prime, Attorney Prime in Ohio, and I don't remember the city out there that's facing the Ku Klux Klan threat. And I just wanted to say that I know Pam Bondi, she threatened Jasmine Crockett for commenting about Elon Musk. Why isn't Pam Bondi talking about the Ku Klux Klan threatening the Black community out there in Ohio? And we're the big names in Ohio coming to the defense of that Black community out there in Ohio. Where's Dave Chappelle? Where's LeBron James? Just wanted to reflect that real quick. But the other thing is, I watched a series on Apple TV called Manhunt, and it's about them looking for John Wilkes Booth after the assassination of President Lincoln. And a lot of the things that Lincoln had to deal with back then, I mean, they draw a beeline right to what's going on today. And it's a textbook case, lesson. And you don't let insurrectionists and people who try to tear down your government get away with it. You hang them. And if they would have hung Jefferson Davis when they should have, we probably wouldn't be going through this. And, Edwin Stanton, they talk about him as the Secretary of War. He did not get to complete, they got the Reconstructionist amendments through, but he really didn't get to complete the work. He was named to be on the Supreme Court, but he never got to serve because he died. And the reason I bring that up is our legislature, Nate, and the legislatures across the country have passed these resolutions to take up a constitutional convention. And if they're successful with doing that, and they're doing it under the guise of term limits, if they're successful at doing that, the entire Constitution is open to be redone. So they can wipe your rights out overnight. And a lot of people, we're just not looking at that. They hung in there with Roe v. Wade and they got it changed. They're trying to put together a constitutional convention to overthrow this government. And I'll leave it at that and let some other people call in. Thank you for taking my call, Nate.
Well,
Thank you.
If you want me to briefly address, yeah, I'm grew up in Akron, Ohio, and I now live in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm very familiar with the KKK marching. It's in a community right outside of Cincinnati, which is in the southern part of our state, near the Indiana and Kentucky border. And so a number of African Americans in those communities got frustrated and, basically, said, hey, we're going to patrol and make sure that the KKK do not threaten us. And, certainly they acted appropriately. I do believe that the Department of Justice should have been involved with that. I don't think that's appropriate in terms of the threats that were made. Now, in terms of LeBron James, I'm a big LeBron James supporter. And he's somebody that has been very active and vocal in the community. He's created a school, in Akron, Ohio, that's doing very, very well. So I have nothing but good things to say about LeBron and his commitment to the cause. I have not heard anything from him, but I'm sure that given his past history, his heart's certainly in the right place. But I do agree that this is something that, when statements and things like this occur, you do need a strong Department of Justice making, comments to let people know, where we stand. You have a right of free speech, but when things go into hate speech and threats to others, something should be said. So I agree with you entirely.
I agree with you in principle, Pierre, but I'm a little afraid of that result of hanging. I think that life is precious, no matter what our disagreement is. And so I'm a little cautious about the using of the word hanging as a result, because oftentimes we are the ones that end up being hung. So I would just be cautious.
I'm
you
reminded
recall
of what Winston Churchill once said, and that is, danger is real, and fear is a choice. So we're at a point in our history where we're in danger because our democracy was already quite fragile, but we're not powerless. Remember, we the people. And so we have the power to, if we decide to come together, united to save or rebuild our democracy. So I don't buy and I certainly understand it, Attorney Primes, about, their fear and that they can lose elections because they're targeted, if they step up and say something. But again, my um, opinion is that fear is a choice. And if it means that you lose an election, so be it. And so my view is that silence is acceptance of what's happening.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely that they should speak up. What I was pointing to, Attorney Banks, is just, what the mindset of existing politicians are. And you're right, history will judge a lot of us. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of history. We can look back and times that Attorney Grimes has a better reflection of than us. I mean, imagine yourself being on the other side of history with Little Rock 9 or the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So my admonition to all politicians is, hey, you can get this temporary gain and stay in office, but history is cruel. And not only will that be something that you'll have to remember, but your children's children will have to remember as well. Because one of the things that Governor Wallace, lamented, and he was, for your audience, was a, notorious governor of Alabama, and made a number of statements: segregation now, segregation forever. And on his deathbed, he tried to change that history, but it was already written. So I think, people need to kind of, reflect on that, while they are in office, that, hey, not only they have to do the right thing, but they're accountable to history if they don't.
The other big issue that was a bombshell this week, panel, is that these significant security lapse by the people in charge of the government most secret ability to defend our country and to enforce rules and regulations worldwide. The Department of Defense, the upper echelon of our society, engaged Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic, received an invitation from the National Security Advisor, Michael Walls, to join a signal group chat. He was put in a group chat with several high-ranking White House officials. He received plans to bomb Houthi target in Yemen. So before the bombing occurred, they improperly released to a civilian the plans for attack. In American history, I've never seen anything remotely close to such a security breach before. I've never heard anything like this before. In fact, when Hillary Clinton ran for president, they were saying lock her up for simply having emails to staff members. They were saying it was a breach of security, even though it was never documented. Here, we have clear evidence. So the people who were saying lock her up, Hespat and those folks, they're in violation of what appears to be several significant laws. I don't get it. It seemed like to me there should have been a bigger public outcry about this.
Well, it wasn't classified material, wasn't it, Nate? It was just journal information they were sharing with one another, wasn't it?
Well, that's the outright lie. That is, and we got to step up to, they talk about misinformation and disinformation. That's the outright lie that they are advocating with respect to, that situation. And it's just outrageous, as you said, Attorney Lee. Never before in the history have we seen something quite like this national security breach.
Yeah, it is outrageous because for a number of reasons. Number one, Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign was derailed because of alleged security concerns. There were calls for independent counsel. Then FBI Director Comey was involved. There was news leak after news leak, story after story, and now you hear a lot of silence from those same people that were calling for Hillary Clinton's head because of this private email server. And so I think there needs to be some consistency. And that's the importance of having, a strong democracy, having a news media that are going to give you a historical perspective. And that's sort of part of the problem. There's so much misinformation out there that people don't understand that there's an inherent conflict. The final point that I'll raise that raises a lot of concerns with me is we're talking about our Secretary of Defense, and at the same time, a lot of this administration is talking about illegal diversity, equity, inclusion, and people unqualified. I mean, here's someone that if you stack him up to the African American, Joint Chief of Staff, the highest ranking woman, Colin Powell, he can't hold a candle, but quote unquote, he's qualified. Had someone African American had those qualifications, meager qualifications, it would be an outrage. And so, those are things that we need to really kind of bring up. And the final point is that this isn't just an idle conversation that was leaked. I mean, this was a military operation. Had that information got into the wrong hands, those that are engaged in that military operation, just following orders, they could come into harm's way if the enemy finds out about that. So it's something that's very, very serious.
Vanita was correct. And I was just teasingly saying it was declassified, wasn't classified material. It is an outright lie for them to double down and say that this was not classified when they're talking about going and killing someone 2 or 3 hours before that's actually done. That's a military secret. So, but for them to double down and say it wasn't classified, is frightening to me because it shows that they will lie about anything that they want the public to believe. Again, it's an outright lie, like Vanita said. I think Hillary Clinton stepped up and said it wasn't a slip or anything, it was just stupid on their part. This is a good example of stupidity for them to be on a regular channel or talking about a military plan. It doesn't make sense. They don't respect the jobs they have. They don't understand the job they have, or they're so arrogant and entitled that they think they can do anything they want to. They think they can walk down Fifth Avenue and kill somebody and not be prosecuted because that's what their leader thinks. We're dealing with the king, not a president.
I think we got to redefine what the term DEI mean, but in their case, the D got to be dumb as hell, as a starting point. But there was so many different issues, and we don't have a lot of time left. I watched every day this immigration and deportation flight. I watched this circular event with a federal judge and administration basically claiming they could tell a federal judge to go to hell in a nuts case. I've never seen any such level of disrespect for the judicial system before, and look like they're getting away with it. And here's the problem I'm having with these deportation. They say that they're deporting criminals without any evidence that anybody they put on the plane has committed any crime anywhere. Right. So we're supposed to take the word of people who now we know are chronic liars, who basically says that, these secret war plans aren't really plans. I mean, it's so insulting that they're taking this situation and now everybody repeating this lie. They're shipping criminals out without any hearing to determine whether or not anybody on the plane ever committed a crime in their life. They produce no evidence. And I'm concerned about that. And because I see on the news media, they're saying they're taking these felons without any proof.
And Nate, the scary thing is they're doubling down and saying it wasn't classified material. And I think it's safe to bet that many people, I won't say what percentage, believe that it wasn't classified material. It was okay to do what they did, and they just go on to the next thing. They're deporting people who haven't committed the crime. They got immigrant people who have the green card, or some even who have gotten their citizenship, are scared as hell that they're going to be deported from this country and deported back to where they came from. So, and they're talking about not just deporting people, they're talking about putting people in, I won't overstate it, but the Nazi concentration camps couldn't be much worse than this El Salvador prison that they're glorifying. Where they're
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the things too that one of the federal judges pointed out is that, we have legislation on the books that you cannot deport someone if you know they're going to be tortured. So you have Secretary Noem that gave an interview in front of the prison where people are housed in inhumane conditions, and Attorney Lee is correct. There have been allegations from the attorneys representing some of these individuals that were deported, indicating that they weren't involved in gang activities, and then come to find out that there's an allegation that individuals that have been deported have been sexually assaulted. So again, we have to just get back to fundamentals that, hey, if you're going to charge someone, they have a right to be heard. They have a right to present evidence. And, if it's a clear and present danger, there's procedures where you can expedite, deportations. But the concern that many of us have is that there is a unilateral act of just deporting these individuals without giving them proper due process, and then also violating existing law if you know they're going to be subject to torture in these particular places. So it may be a nice photo op, and you're tough, that you see individuals with their head shaven and they're forced to kind of bend their backs and are shackled. But we have to remember, hey, we're a country of laws, and we have to have standards. If you have committed a violation, you deserve your right in court. And I think that's something that we all need to, not only indicate publicly, but also in our individual networks as well. Because I repeat it, democracies can go by the wayside very, very quickly if you're not careful.
And was it Rubio that was down there with the president of El Salvador? And they were talking, agreed that they could not deport, they could transfer some American citizens who were in prison to that prison in El Salvador. They met about a month ago to discuss that and made that agreement. And Trump said he thought it was a good idea.
Right. And one of the judges basically said, hey, look, not only can you not deport someone, to a place they're going to be tortured, but also you're deporting someone that they have no connection. That's not their home country.
Right.
So luckily,
Right.
We have the judiciary that is taking a position, a principal position. But again, we don't know, where things are going to go as it migrates to the federal system all the way to the Supreme Court.
Okay, we had a caller. You got a question or comment for us today?
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Renee in New York City. I just want to say once again, another great show. You got so much topics to cover with this legal stuff, right? Since Trump has been back. I just wanted to point out that someone said, well, what do we do about it? So I know there's a lot of ideas out there. I say we just continue what we're doing. Apparently it's working. There have been two significant wins for the Democrats that a lot of people are not talking about as much as they should because there's just so much news to cover. But there have been some wins in Pennsylvania, and there was another one, and I forget the state right now, but I posted it in the chat. And those two wins are significant. In Lancaster, which is a ruby red state, this gentleman won, Democrat won that seat after not winning that seat for 136 years. That's a long time. So I would say
Lancaster.
I'm sorry, Lancaster, yes, sir. Yeah.
Lancaster in
Guys,
California.
see on the outer room. Yeah, no, that's in Pennsylvania. Close the door.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a Pennsylvania seat in Lancaster. It's not her time yet. No. That was in Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, my children just came in. That was in Pennsylvania, and that was Lancaster, sir. Yeah, you're correct, Attorney Grimes. It was Pennsylvania. And then there was another seat that was in a ruby red district. It wasn't a state Senate seat. It was a congressional, I think it was just a representative seat. But anyway, those are important races. And the reason why I say that is because these two canaries went into the coal mine and told us it was safe. It is safe for us to continue what we're doing. And so we need to continue our fight the way we're doing. The courts have been amazing, and I'm so glad that they held up. I also, in my opinion, SCOTUS is going to hold up too. And the reason why I say that is because I think Robinson Barrett realized their mistakes that they made in the past and see what they've created. They made this Frankenstein too. So I think they're going to try to stop the monster. And then my other thought on that is that there's a race coming up in Wisconsin. It's a state Supreme Court seat as well. And this is it's pivotal because if this seat is lost, then they got to wait another, I think it is 10 years. They have to wait another 10 years before there's another seat that for this seat to become vacant again. And this seat is the only seat that's keeping Wisconsin from putting back in the abortion ban. So this is another race on April 1st that I think people should put their minds to. And if you know anybody in Wisconsin, you should really be reaching out to them in that particular state to push them to make sure that happens. I'm keeping an eye on that one. There's a couple of other races that are coming up on April 15th down in Florida that I'm keeping an eye on. And I think the Republicans are worried about that one as well. Those are just my opinions. I think people should keep their eye on the prize, continue what they're doing, protest, resist. Don't let them forget and don't let them think this is normal. And in the courts and the lawyers, although there's some that have been to the knee, the lawyers like yourselves who are doing amazing jobs. And I just hope y'all continue to hold the line. And that's what I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Banks, you had a comment? Go ahead.
Oh, excellent points, Renee. Yes, we're watching that Wisconsin Supreme Court race very, very closely, and we are assembling uh, groups to go to Wisconsin, knock on doors. We're phone banking. We're doing everything possible to get the word out regarding the importance of that Wisconsin Supreme Court election. And again, Elon Musk, he has contributed millions to that campaign, and he either was here yesterday or will be in Wisconsin today, um, advocating on behalf of the Republican candidate.
I think it's really important to really keep a close eye on those races. But, one of the things that I think we got to keep our eye on is that we have to keep, people engaged. We have to make sure they're registered to vote. But we also have to, push progressive politicians that if you take the House, hey, let's plan now. What is your plan? What are the first 100 days going to look like? If you take the Senate in 26, what is that going to look like? Now, for good or for bad, the Republicans, they, had unanimity. They had a budget passed. They had plans in terms of what they're going to do. And so I think we need to push our politicians that if, the tide is turned in 26 or 28, hey, what is the plan? How are you going to move things forward? How are you going to reverse some of the things that we do not like that are taking place right now? Because if you look back, when, President Biden got into office originally, it took so long to get a budget. There was a lot of infighting. We got to figure that out right now and have that plan in place. Develop our own 2025 plan, a 2030 plan. Things need to be done so we're not caught flat-footed.
We used
You're
to be able to
absolutely
plan
right.
that far ahead, Marlon, to 28 and 30, but with what's going on now, Marlon, I don't have the confidence that we're going to be here in 28 if we don't correct this ship now.
As the U.S. Government is being gutted
Right.
every day as we speak. And Attorney Primes, I agree with you wholeheartedly that we should hold our elected officials accountable. And many are asking, okay, so who the progressive leaders of our nation right now? And the answer to that question is each of us. At this juncture, we must lead the leaders. We must thrive where we are planted. We can't wait for our elected officials to set the agenda. We have to work with individuals in community to set an agenda for our elected officials and hold them accountable. We also have to, at this point in our history, we have to support and fund those organizations that are already doing the work. Organizations like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund that's filing these lawsuits, the ACLU, the Lawyers Committee, and others. If we're not members, we need to join those organizations. We need to continue to rally our churches and our faith groups and create local communities of action and accountability where we can all come together to demand justice and equality. Continue to flood those field offices, not only of your parties, but of the other parties as well. We should phone bomb both the Republican and the Democratic representatives. Continue to flood their inboxes, write them, call them, tweet them, visit them. We can't let up because silence, is a form of complicity.
Well, my understanding is this 2025 project started back with Lewis Powell back in 1970, 1971 with a little 6-page memorandum that he wrote and presented it to people like Couch and the Guy Coors. They put money into it. And so they have been for the last 50 years working on the implementation of a plan to have the government taken over by corporate America and business. And they finally reached their day with Trump in the forefront of it. So do we have to go 50 years with this situation before we stop it? Because we're dealing with a 50-year plan that's been laid in place where judges have been put in position, politicians have been taken over and control, and they're implementing this plan.
Well, I don't think we have to stand on our, sit on our hands. But all I'm suggesting is that planning process has to start now. You can work on 2 tracks. You can be involved, as Attorney Banks eloquently indicated, in terms of these organizations that were founded in the worst of times during Jim Crow. After Plessy v. Ferguson, joining your NAACP are very important, and doing the work, as W.B. Du Bois indicated, we are the talented 10th. So we should be reaching back and being part of all these organizations, whether it's your Black church, the National Bar Association, NAACP, and what have you. But at the same time, we need to do that planning as well. So then when we do get in power, when those that have our views are in power, there's action. It's not stymied. That's my point.
Well, incredible. Well, I'd like to thank everyone, our VIP panel, for participating today. There's so many legal stories now coming out of the White House that is like, it should be considered the illegal White House, because these things are just outrageous what they're doing. Ultimately, hopefully someone is held accountable. But next week, come join us again as we deal with legal issues of the day. And I'd like to thank everybody, and may God bless and keep you until we talk once again.